In the stands for March Madness. Could an NCAA decision provide an even greater boost for the state's hospitality sector, still reeling from the pandemic? With a once-in-a-lifetime big dance just weeks away, Visit Indy's Chris Gall zeroes in on the economic impact. Indianapolis-based IBM Inc. says it is transforming the workplace around the globe, one supply at a time, through its smart vending machines. President Mike Pitts explains how the Indiana company, is connecting with Facebook, Dropbox, HP, and more. Plus,
I'm Mary Rachel Redmond in Kennard, Indiana, where the long-lost art of hand-dipping chocolate is alive and well and simply delicious. I'll take you on a behind-the-scenes tour of the original Goods Candies. Look at this stuff. More sweetness coming up.
Looks pretty tasty. Details on those stories and much more ahead on this edition of Inside Indiana Business. Hello and welcome to Inside Indiana Business. I'm Gary Dick. After nearly a year of COVID-19 cancellations and cutbacks, Indiana businesses, restaurants, hotels, hospitality venues are preparing for what could be a much-needed shot in the arm. The entire NCAA men's basketball tournament, all rounds of March Madness and the Final Four, will be held right here in Indiana. The NCAA says those venues will be able to have up to 25% of capacity with physical distancing. Now, the game's already expected to have a $100 million impact on the state's economy, but could the addition of fans boost that number in a big way? For an answer, pleased to welcome back to the show Visit Indy's Senior Vice President, Chris Gall. As always, Chris, welcome.
Gary, thanks for having me on. I'm inside the convention center where basketball courts are already starting to be put down in anticipation of March Madness.
Yeah, a lot of people looking forward to next month, to be sure. Did that surprise you, the 25% number? I talked to people who were anticipating there would be fans, but they were pretty excited, pretty happy that, hey, it was at least up to that 25% mark.
It was a big win. It was a win that the NCAA put the health and safety of fans first and foremost. And so they're working in lockstep with Marion County and the health department. It was a very big win in terms of how it will boost the economic impact felt by this event. And so we were just so incredibly thankful that the NCAA was so thoughtful in this decision making, both putting the health and safety of the visitors, but also allowing a few more stands and visitors, fans in the stands and visitors, because we know that will boost the overall economic impact of the event in the 30 days that the city hosts the event.
Yeah, Chris, any way to calculate how much additional? As I mentioned, the early expectation was maybe $100 million in economic impact from having the entirety of March Madness here. How much more could this add?
Well, as a point of perspective, the last time we hosted the NCAA Final Four, it was $225 million in economic impact. Certainly, there's a lot of unknown factors. And so Team Indy, led by the Indiana Sports Corps, we're going to lean on an economist from Rockport Analytics. This is the same firm that helped us with the impact of the Super Bowl in 2012. The same economist who has helped us develop our Visit Indy Economic Impact Calculator. And so this firm is going to really look at all the hundreds of variables, arguably thousands of variables that go into hosting March Madness in its entirety. And we're going to have a post-game report on just how healthy this event was. And no matter how much is derived from March Madness being hosted here in its entirety, it's a much needed boost because we know that nearly 50% of the tourism workforce, 83,000 men and women in total, nearly 50% are currently underemployed or not employed. And so this is going to have Hoosiers earning paychecks and back working in our hotels, our museums, and restaurants. And so much needed boost no matter the total once the nets are cut down.
Yeah, really a staggering number you point out there in terms of the employment in the hospitality sector. Chris, do you look, are people looking at March Madness, the Final Four, as perhaps a springboard, a reopening, if you will, in particular for downtown Indianapolis?
Without question. We know that other meeting planners nationwide, other event planners are scratching their head. They're wondering, why is Indianapolis able to host March Madness in its entirety during a pandemic. And that's causing other meetings to look at Indianapolis, to prospect Indianapolis. And so we have a lot of proof of concepts. Since last July, we've hosted 51 in-person meetings, anywhere from 50 to 5,000 individuals. And so each of those is a proof of concept that we, Team Indy, can pull off these events. And so without question, hosting March Madness, a lot of eyes, a lot of attention, and a springboard, kind of forward momentum, continued momentum, heading into 2021 to book future meetings, to get residents back downtown, and to drive tourism here as we would normally enjoy a big amount of visitors to the city in April, moving into May, June, July. So really a lot of momentum behind hosting this event.
I know, Chris, you're pulling out a couple of pages from the Super Bowl playbook when it comes to service workers and getting them engaged and trained and those types of things.
Our Super Service program debuted, to your point, Gary, in 2012 to get our hospitality workforce ready for the big game. We are doing the same thing and getting, this time virtual, our men and women in the hospitality industry onto Zooms, into breakout rooms to get them ready to welcome the world to Indianapolis in time for March. And so we go through methodically what to know, when the games will have lulls so that restaurants can staff up in between games. We're making sure docents at museums are ready. And so that's a best practice we've continued through since the Super Bowl, and we'll put in place in the next 2 weeks is our Super Service program to make sure that Hoosier hospitality is more than a catchphrase.
Chris Gull, Senior Vice President at Visit Indy. I know you're a busy guy right now, Chris, so thanks for joining us. I know we'll be talking throughout the month of March, and good luck with everything going on.
Thanks for having me on, Gary.
All right. Well, he was born in the Caribbean, grew up on the West Coast, the son of a rocket scientist with dreams of performing on Saturday Night Live. He's Visit Indy CEO Leonard Hoops. He's my guest on the next Business and Beyond podcast. He's in charge of leading Central Indiana's $5 billion convention and tourism industry, which, of course, taking a big hit from the pandemic. He reflected on when he realized Central Indiana businesses were in for a choppy ride.
I heard people referring to we're all in the same boat, and I didn't come up with this, but I had previously heard someone else say, we're not all in the same boat, we're actually all in different boats in the same storm.
Visit Indy's Leonard Hoops with the backstory on how Indiana landed March Madness, why he ditched a potential career as a sports writer, and how his oldest son's difficult childbirth has had a huge impact spiritually on his life. This week's Business and Beyond podcast. To subscribe, just go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com and click on the subscribe tab. Well, up next, a high-tech smart vending business with deep Indiana ties, how the pandemic has forced Indianapolis-based IVM to change course with a new product that is getting the attention of some big corporate players. It's time to go inside innovation, brought to you by Allegion, pioneering safety. Well, Indianapolis-based IVM Inc. was pioneer in the vending machine business nearly a quarter of a century ago. Now the company says its automated smart lockers, kiosks, and vending machines are helping customers address evolving needs, some brought on by the pandemic. And I'm pleased to welcome back to the show IVM President Mike Pitts, who thinks the so-called smart solutions can help transform the future of work. Mike, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, give us the history, the heritage, if you will. 1991, IVM was created, but at that time, you were really a traditional vending machine company.
That is correct. We were managing the vending operations for large companies all over the United States. They would have vending solutions at their facilities. And when I say vending solutions, I mean pop, candy, sandwiches, and we managed that for them all over the United States. That is correct.
Mike, talk about how you very quickly kind of pivoted back then, or a couple of years later, to these more tech-focused vending solutions geared toward blue-collar workers. What kinds of things were you vending?
Well, one of our clients came to us, Union Pacific Railroad, and asked us to vend their personal protective equipment, or their PPE, gloves, goggles, earplugs, bee sting kits, batteries, and we developed a system that would allow them to vend those products to their employees as they needed them and control that distribution for Union Pacific.
So you have grown that business over the years. The pandemic hit, forcing a lot of companies, many companies, to pivot, to change what they're doing. You did that as well. So you came up with some so-called smart solutions, the Smart Vault. Talk about what this new technology is about. Wayfair, I know, is a big customer of yours, and how they're using this new technology.
That is correct. As you may know, COVID has impacted everybody up and down the chain. It has driven e-commerce through the roof. We all have the Amazon Prime stopping outside our houses now. That drove a lot of business to Wayfair. So their distribution centers were kind of being overwhelmed. All of their employees have these little hand scanners that they track and order through the distribution center. Those hand scanners were being lost or misplaced or not charged. We developed the Smart Vault system to track those scanners. They store those scanners in the Smart Vault, they charge them, they distribute them to the employees as they need them, and they know where they're at. And Wayfair is in the process of rolling the Smart Vaults out to all of their distribution centers around the world.
I know you're have big business in the education sector, as well as the remote workforce area as well. But Mike, talk about, I mentioned Wayfair, but you've got a lot of big name customers.
Yes, we're very fortunate. We have companies like Facebook, the Federal Reserve, Salesforce, Intel, Microsoft. These are all clients around the world that are using our solutions, whether it be a Smart Vault, a Smart Center, a Smart Locker. They have them all over the world, using them to help their employees.
Mike Pitts is the president at IVM Inc., a great Indianapolis company, great example, I think, Mike, of a company using technology and innovation to continue to grow even in the face of the pandemic. So, Mike, I appreciate it very much. We look forward to following your story.
Thank you so much for having us. Have a great day.
All right. Well, how does taking a bite out of a piece of hand-dipped chocolate sound, especially when there's a throwback element to the recipe dating back nearly a century ago to Hoosiers Aunt Dee and Uncle Beanie? Mary Rachel Redmond takes us inside the historic goods candies in Henry County in this week's Around Indiana. Here's what's making news now around Indiana, brought to you by Chapman Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing, the man for all seasons, Chapman, chapmanheating.com. Well, Kennard, Indiana has a population of just under 600, but the small Henry County town boasts one of the most delicious chocolate shops this side of the Wabash, or so says our Mary Rachel Redmond, who has more from the original goods candies.
One Madison County paper described these chocolate candies as hauntingly good. The Muncie Star declared it a candy lover's paradise. The Greenfield Reporter, an addiction to die for.
Dark chocolate lemon.
The original goods candies may just be the best kept secret in all of Indiana. Yes, it's that good.
Well, you won't find hand-dipped chocolates anywhere else.
For over a half century, Goods has been churning out custom-made candies in Kennard, Indiana. And it's a family affair. The shop's current owner is Kevin Vickery, a fourth-generation confectioner and chocolatier who learned the business and inherited the recipes from his grandfather and mother.
I'm a native Hoosier, and so were my folks and my grandparents, and we've always had small-town Indiana in our blood.
So what is it that makes Goods chocolate different from your run-of-the-mill Russell Stover's or Kit Kat bar at the grocery? Vickery says it's simple.
The lost art of hand-dipping chocolate. Working chocolate on marble slabs, hand tempering and hand cooling, coating each individual piece. It's kind of the way everyone made candy 150 years ago. Mass-produced chocolates typically add a lot of extra oils and paraffins to use as stabilizers in their chocolates. And we're able to just keep it all pure.
The boards are floured with rice flour, that way they're gluten-free.
Kevin's wife Kathy is a classically trained Le Cordon Bleu chef.
It's a difficult thing to learn. Everyone is like a unique snowflake.
Look at hers, look at mine. Wow. This is not easy at all.
I'm going to show you one real quick, because sometimes I'll come over and do one in,
Okay, let me
in
see
the
you do it.
person's space. So you're going to take it and kind of rotate it.
Oh, you're
like
rotating
that.
it. Okay.
Yeah. That way I get chocolate on every side. So you're going to do that and then set it down. And that little thread there, just lay them down.
I really just want to lick my hand. I really do.
You know, our customers can come in here and literally pick, you know, 3 of these, 2 of these, custom assortments.
Decisions.
The 55-year reputation and a high-quality product, word of mouth does as much good in our advertising as anything. If you like chocolates, you're going to find something in here that you like.
You want me to put a little bit of tape on each side?
No, thank you, because I will probably eat this on my way out. Hold on. Oh my gosh. Ooh. So good.
Mary Rachel Redman, Inside Indiana Business.
All right, Mary Rachel, thank you. Well, also making headlines around Indiana this week, the Indiana Department of Transportation has announced $100 million in federal transportation funding being awarded to 54 cities, towns, and counties in rural areas of the state. That money to be used and invested in road and bridge improvements and sidewalk and trail projects. Combined with local funds, NDOT says nearly $125 million is being invested in those projects, which include 32 bridge rehabilitation and replacement projects. NDOT says communities must pay at least 20% in matching funds to receive the federal funding. Indiana Tech has relocated its Northwest Indiana campus from Munster to Hammond. The school says the move necessary to better serve the growing needs of students and corporate partners. The new campus located near Interstate 80 and Kennedy Avenue in Hammond. New York-based Capital Dynamics CEI and Hoosier Energy in Bloomington signed a long-term power purchase agreement. Under terms of the deal, Hoosier Energy to purchase 150 megawatts of the power generated by the RATS 2 solar project. That's a CEI-owned project, a solar deal being developed in Knox County. Construction on that project expected to begin next year, with commercial operation to begin in 2023. While protecting Indiana businesses and schools from COVID-related lawsuits, WORKSHARE is another issue, raising the cigarette tax. All legislative priorities for the Indiana Chamber. So where do those issues stand at the midway point of the General Assembly? We get some answers from Chamber President Kevin BRINEGAR. Well, Indiana lawmakers have reached the halfway point of the General Assembly. One of the key legislative agenda items for the Indiana Chamber of Commerce, WORKSHARE, a program that would allow employers facing tough times to reduce the hours of employees. But that didn't even get a committee vote. With reaction to that, we go to the Chamber's CEO and President, Kevin BRINEGAR. Kevin, I know that was a disappointment, but we'll get to that in a moment. You've had several wins at the State House so far this session, perhaps the biggest and one of the highest profile liability protections for businesses and schools and others related to COVID-19.
Absolutely. That was our #1 priority this session, Gary. And the Chamber led a coalition of organizations to push that through. And that has gotten through the legislative process to the governor's desk and been signed. That bill will provide protections for schools, businesses, and hospitals who follow established guidelines, and that is retroactive back to March 1st. We want to give a shout out to Senator Mark Messmer and Representative Jerry Torr for carrying that legislation through.
Kevin, broadband, such a huge issue around the state, especially rural broadband. You're excited or enthused, I guess, about some money in the budget for that.
Yeah, the House passed budget includes $250 million to expand broadband in underserved areas, and there's also legislation coming out from the Senate side that would look at how best to use those types of funds most efficiently and effectively.
Regional cities, or originally it was the Regional Cities Initiative. Name is changing, the program changing a bit, but there's a lot of funding in the budget there as well.
Yeah, $150 million. It won't be the same sort of winner-take-all approach that we had with the original regional cities, but it will encourage multiple units of government to band together to put together programs and initiatives of regional significance. So we're very pleased about that.
The tech community obviously keeping an eye on, thanks to the State House, the venture capital tax credit, that cap, the annual cap on that increased. I assume you see that as a positive.
Yeah, that's a real positive. The annual cap is increased to $20 million, so that'll allow more venture capital tax credits to be taken.
The Chamber, you have been very out front and vocal on health and health-related issues and the lack of healthiness, I guess you will, of Indiana and the impact it has on business. The cigarette tax, there is an increase in the cigarette tax in the budget, but not as much as you would like.
Yeah, we'd say we're at halftime in the session and we're in the game. There is a 50-cent per pack increase in cigarette tax and other vaping and tobacco products. We'll continue to work on that. Our goal is to have that go up by $2 a pack so that it can really impact our health metrics and reduce smoking and use of tobacco products in Indiana.
Yeah, okay. Now we want to get to a disappointment for the Chamber and your business agenda, and that's WorkShare. There are 28 so-called WorkShare states around the country. Indiana, not one of them. You had hoped that that would change, but it didn't happen. Give us the lowdown on what happened.
Well, the bill did receive a hearing in the Senate Pitches Labor Committee, Senate Bill 44. Literally every member of the committee would have voted for it except the chairman. Over half the committee members were co-authors, and this bill would allow employers a second alternative under unemployment insurance during down economic times to reduce employees' hours and have them receive partial unemployment benefits, keep their full employer benefits, and not have to lay people off entirely. The recent Brookings study said that had Indiana been a WorkShare state, we could have saved as many as 34,000 jobs last summer. One large Indiana manufacturer testified in the committee hearing that they shut down 2 plants this past summer and wouldn't have done that if they'd had access to WorkShare as they do in other states. So it was just incomprehensible that this legislation did not move through.
All right, Kevin BRINEGAR, Indiana Chamber of Commerce, thanks for the update. I know we'll be talking later in the session.
Thank you very much. Look forward to it, Gary.
Eating healthy may be one of the last things parents think about when dealing with their young children being treated in the hospital. We'll have that story and more when we return. Well, a home-cooked meal can nourish both the body and mind, especially during times of stress. That's the philosophy of the new executive chef at the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Central Indiana. Business of Health reporter Kylie Valletta has that story. Kylie.
Thank you, Gary. The Ronald McDonald House in Indianapolis is a home away from home for families of young patients at Riley Hospital for Children at IU Health and other Central Indiana hospitals. Well, home-cooked meals are a big part of feeling at home. And for the first time in its 40-year history, the Ronald McDonald House now has an executive chef on board to provide meals that comfort families when they need it most. Chef Vlad Bora joins me now to tell us more about his new role. I hear you go by Chef V for short. Thanks for being on the show today.
I do. Thank you for having me.
All right, we were doing a bunch of math together, and we averaged out you make about roughly 50 meals per day. So you've got a big job there. Tell us about some of the meals that you serve there at Ronald McDonald House.
So the families that are staying with us at the Ronald McDonald House come from all walks of life. But one thing that they have in common is that they're facing a crisis of a lifetime. Having a sick the child staying in the hospital. So many families come here with little more than their clothing on their backs, care for their children, and worried how they're going to live away from home. The Ronald McDonald House is here to ease that burden and provide a sense of comfort and normalcy for the families facing so much. My role at the house represents how we are committed to not just providing a warm and comfortable place to stay, but nourishing as well. Home-cooked meals. We want to take care of our family holistically and so that they're better equipped to be present for their child and cope with the stress of the child's condition. So a lot of my meals are geared towards comfort and nourishing as well.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about that, because your heart really is focused on this philosophy that meals go beyond just nourishing the body and that it can really help these families' spirit. So talk just a little bit about that.
So with us in the past have noted that meal times have been their favorite time of day, when they get to meet other families and bond over their shared experiences. COVID-19 means that families don't get to interact as much, but they will still experience the joy of having a home-cooked meal and the comfort that comes from it. Food has a unique way of comforting us. It's the international language that brings people closer. We connect with positive feelings and memories when we enjoy good food, and a well-balanced meal helps us become more mentally and physically energized. So my philosophy is geared behind that. Trying to provide nutrition that not only offers a break in a day from an environment standpoint, but also provides the nutrition necessary to keep fighting.
Okay, this video is making me hungry. Everything looks delicious. So you also have a big job outside of the kitchen, which is to develop business partnerships. What kind of partnerships are you looking for, and why are they so important?
So it did not take long for me, serving full-time within the charitable world, to realize that partnership and collaboration is what drives the success of our mission forward. As COVID-19 vaccines become more widespread, we're looking forward to the near future when we will be able to welcome back groups to the house. An exciting part of our culinary program will include opportunities for businesses, community groups, and families to visit a pair meal with me to serve to our guests. While we continue to plan and prepare for that, we still have immediate needs that can be addressed today. We want to develop community partnerships that will help us continue to feed the families staying at the house. If you were thinking of our house kitchen as a restaurant, we need the help, the food, the supplies, and the equipment to keep it running at optimum capacity. So partnerships with local businesses and likewise charitable organizations are vital. We think that without them, we could not fulfill our mission. So I would encourage anybody that is interested in helping to contact me directly to our website at rmhccin.org.
And you mentioned off camera, many of your families face food insecurity. And so even when they leave the house, explain how you try to send them home with some things to help them once they get home, too.
Once more, because of the generosity of our community, allies, and donors, we're able to send families home with a bag of supplies. We call them take-home bags. We include activity books for the kids and other essentials, even some canned goods, dry pasta, and other items, so they are able to prepare a meal when they get home. Most importantly, we work to make sure that we're sending families home with connections to organizations and professionals they can reach out to in case they need help. So the social workers at our local hospital are amazing resources for our families, and we know that they value and appreciate that help. Furthermore, we partner with Gleaners and Second Helpings, taking advantage of several of their programs where we rescue food and put it to work here at the house.
So you have such an interesting resume. We only have a few seconds left, but you left a corporate job that you were a corporate chef for over a decade, and in the middle of a pandemic, you switched to a nonprofit. So what's that been like?
Chefs naturally respond well during times of crisis, bringing everybody together to work towards a common goal. So I think that the hospitality leisure industries were heavily impacted by the pandemic and COVID-19. But being able to find a match for your abilities that have a higher purpose other than just professionally, I think was great. So I thoroughly enjoyed my transition, and I'm hopeful that my abilities and the past and lessons that I learned will continue to move this forward.
All right, Chef V, good luck there at the Ronald McDonald House. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you.
And Gary, back to you.
Kylie, thank you. Well, this week, the Indiana Chamber of Commerce released its annual list of the best places to work in Indiana. That list contains 125 businesses from around the state. The Chamber says the winners determined through employer reports and comprehensive employee surveys. There are more than 30 newcomers to this year's list. Chamber will unveil company rankings on May 6th during an awards event. Now, the format of the ceremony this year, whether it's virtual, in person, or maybe a hybrid, has yet to be determined. The man in charge of shepherding Central Indiana's $5 billion tourism and hospitality industry is my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. It's been a very tough year for Visit Indy and CEO Leonard Hoops, but with March Madness on the horizon and other events in the pipeline, he's bullish on the future. Hoops was born in the Caribbean island of Trinidad, grew up on the West Coast. The son of a rocket scientist, he had dreams of performing on Saturday Night Live. And it's no wonder he wanted to do that given his impressions.
Howard Cosell live at Madison Square Garden with the greatest fight of all time, Muhammad Ali. Muhammad, tell me about your fight with Joe Frazier. I'm the greatest fighter that's ever lived. I whooped Joe Frazier. I float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Leonard Hoops, the comedian, and much more. Visit Indy's Leonard Hoops is my guest on the Business and Beyond podcast. To subscribe, just go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com and click on the subscribe tab. What happens when Zoom fatigue meets 3D? Well, your virtual meetings may take on a whole new engaging experience. More on Ball State's new digital platform that brings virtual into business meetings and online classes. Well, Ball State's Institute for Digital Intermediate Arts has developed a platform called Meet 3D. It's designed to combat what is known as Zoom fatigue. Perhaps we've all experienced it to some degree. It incorporates virtual reality into business meetings, online classes, and other venues, allowing users to choose avatars and interact in a shared digital environment. The lab's director, John Philwalk, is here now to explain how it works. John, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, okay. The Institute for Digital Intermediate Arts, about 15 years old now. I think a great example of the digital focus, innovation focus, I guess, at Ball State. Give me a thumbnail description of the lab.
Yeah, essentially we have clients from across the globe that we work with in helping them solve problems across any discipline, from healthcare to museums to arts to teaching and learning.
All right. Obviously, virtual reality is reality now in the classroom and the boardroom, for that matter. Talk about this Meet 3D that you've developed, how the idea came up for this to battle Zoom fatigue.
Yeah, so a lot of the pieces of this we've developed over the years and working on various projects. And early on, we thought, so we had some of this already functional, but we thought, really should focus on creating a product that would help facilitate these kind of shared online experiences and add elements that you can't normally do in a simple video kind of conference.
All right, describe Meet 3D, what it's all about, how it works.
Yeah, so essentially it's not unlike a video game where you can come in and choose a character to represent yourself, and then you would interact with the world. It's multiplayer, so you can see other people that have come in. You can see their name tags over their head, sort of a badge. And you would then also be able to communicate with them through chat or voice. So much like some of these multiplayer games. But the difference is, here we're learning, or perhaps we're at a conference or doing a business meeting, that sort of thing.
Yeah. How are you sensing the reaction, I guess, to Meet 3D from folks you've introduced it to? What's the general reaction?
Yeah, they're excited, and I think we're trying to introduce a bit of a sense of play about it as well. And people, I think, need a little levity.
Yeah.
So we've done something where I saw during the presidential campaigns, they were using kind of a drive-in structure where the audience would come to the rally in cars, and we thought that would be fun. So we created a drive-in lecture hall, so you can choose like a classic car to sit in, things like that. We're also working on we also have very serious spaces that are, traditionally modeled like a conference room or auditorium. But we're also working right now on a breakout room for team building, so you can help problem solve the typical kind of scenario where you can, escape from the room.
Are those things, as we think about a post-pandemic world, these are things coming out of the pandemic that will be, in your view, really just part and parcel of everyday business going forward?
Well, I think that's right. I think, business, teaching, learning, any kind of communication, I think has been altered and will probably continue to be affected by what we've been through this past year. So hopefully not too much longer.
Yeah, right.
We can get out from under it, but yeah, that's my opinion.
Right,
as well.
and as you look at the lab there, it's primarily staff there. Some students are involved, but staff at Ball State getting involved and engaged in the innovation and what's produced there.
Yeah, we have what I like to think of as like a farm system from baseball, where we hire students and they get trained by working with the staff. And we've been fortunate enough to, most of our staff have been with us from the beginning, and they all were Ball State students originally. So I think of it as a kind of a baseball metaphor in that sense.
That's very good. Well, innovation and technology at Ball State making a difference, I think. John Philwalk, the lab director there. Meet 3D is the product. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about it in the future. And John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Gary.
All right. Well, this week, the city of Indianapolis announcing a nearly $200 million investment in a wide-ranging list of public facilities. The investment includes improvements to parks, construction of new public safety facilities, and a major upgrade for animal care services. Mayor Joe Hogsett says the first phase of his Circle City Forward initiative is designed to jumpstart the economy and drive public investment into neighborhoods. Coming up next, professional athletes in Central Indiana taking up a new challenge, tackling social justice issues in poor Hoosier communities. Learn more about the Athlete to Advocate program, its mission, and why it's unique. Well, as the NCAA's March Madness prepares to descend upon Indianapolis and Indiana, so too does the Indiana High School Athletic Association's Hoosier Hysteria, the boys basketball tournament. Bill Benner has more on this week's Inside Indiana Sports. Bill.
Gary, thanks. And the combination of madness and hysteria will certainly make Indiana the once and for all undisputed basketball capital of the universe. Yet even as the IHSA prepares to stage its showcase tournament, it does so amid published reports of overzealousness in the adjudication of student athletes who seek to transfer from one school to the other. And joining us today to discuss both topics is the IHSA Commissioner Paul NEIDIG. And Paul, thanks for joining us.
Oh, certainly my pleasure to join you guys here today on this great show, but glad to be with you, Bill.
Well, Paul, again, a huge month coming up with March Madness taking place entirely in the state of Indiana. And of course, I know you've had to make some schedule adjustments to the boys state basketball tournament, including the state finals. Why don't you talk briefly about that?
Certainly, we've worked with our partners in this, the Pacers and the Fever, and certainly had some communication with the NCAA, and to make all this fit in Indiana with all the basketball games that we have coming up the next month, that there was a little bit of give and take on everybody's part. And our partners came to us and asked if we could make an adjustment in our boys basketball state championships. And we were more than willing to do that because we felt it's so important to celebrate at Bankers Life Fieldhouse, where we always do. So we've moved the boys tournament back 1 week. So we'll finish our semi-state on their traditional date, and we'll have 2 weeks then for our teams to prepare. 8 teams. They'll have 2 weeks to prepare for the state championship game to be held at Bankers Life on April 3rd. And we know at this point now that the NBA schedule has been released for the second half of the season, that we will be contesting 4 games on that April 3rd date, but the time schedule is still to be announced.
Paul, it's been really a remarkable run going all the way back to the fall championships, and now we're wrapping up wrestling, boys swimming, girls swimming championships just a couple of weeks ago. I mean, the fact that all this has come together under the umbrella of COVID and the pandemic has been pretty remarkable.
It is, and I'm so proud of the work that our schools have done. If you go back to July 6th, when we were able to finally get back in touch with our student athletes at the school level, we had a lot of work to do, but we knew we could get it done. And, we had a great fall season and celebrated state championships, but here we are. We've moved past Christmas. We've gone on to the second half of the year. We just finished up girls swimming. We finished up wrestling last weekend. And this weekend, we're going to contest our boys swimming state championship at IUPUI, the Natatorium. And we're going to contest the girls state basketball championship starting with this Friday night. We'll have one contest and then 3 on Saturday. And we're here. We're going to celebrate state championships, and we're going to hang walnut on the wall at their schools once we're done. But it's just a tribute to the people in our buildings and communities and families of the work that's been done to get us to this point.
Paul, let's talk about this issue of transfer. I want to say that the question of transfers has been around since competitive athletics began, whether it's at the NCAA or high school level. Again, a published report this week critical of the IHSA and how it handles transfer. But let's put it into perspective. You have 160,000 some student athletes competing in 22 IHSA sports, but actually very few of those, when they transfer, reach the level of the IHSA having to rule one way or the other.
And that's exactly right. By far, the transfers are handled at the school's part. The receiving school or the school that receives a new student, they start the transfer process. It's sent to the sending school or the school that the student left from. And it's really handled at that level. And the vast majority, we process on an annual basis approximately 4,000 transfers a year. And less than 1% of those transfers end up in no eligibility. And that's not something that we like. We hate that part of it. But the reality of it is we have to look at each transfer independently, and we got to make sure everybody's following the member rules that are established by our membership. We're here to provide oversight to that. And Bill, I would tell you that I've done this for quite a while, and while there's always heartache in it, I've not had anybody walk in the doors here yet and tell me they transfer for athletic reasons. So there's a process you have to go through that's not easy to try to get to the truth. And that's what we have to do with the transfer process. And again, it would be easy if everybody did everything above board, but we know that's just not the case. So we have to investigate and do our best.
And Paul, we got about a minute left. Basically, just explain, I mean, again, this is a rule passed by the membership, but the basis of the rule is to, I guess, to level the playing field and to make sure that nobody's trying to go out there and recruit other student athletes from schools.
That is exactly right. If you look at a metropolitan area such as Indianapolis area, there's 44 schools that a family could reach from one residence. And if there were no transfer rules, we would have a basketball teams of the month, and we'd have a 1A team of the best players in Indianapolis, and we'd have a 2A team of the next best players. And when you're in a school that's boundary-like, and I often talk about Chacamac High School, it's 20 miles to the next school. Their students are raised in that community. They stay in that community. They typically don't transfer in, and they have to have the dream of winning the state championship too. And to protect that dream, we've got to make sure everybody's doing things above boards. And the one thing I hate to talk about is we got coaches that are always looking at somebody else's backyard to see if they can bring kids in to their program. And what's sad about that is they're not taking care of the kids that are in their program. And the kid gets displaced, that means he doesn't get the experience of being a high school athlete in the state of Indiana.
Well, Paul, we certainly appreciate you coming on and giving your perspective on the transfer rule. And again, we all look forward to a great combination of Hoosier history with March Madness. Again, it's going to be a time like none we've ever seen here in Indiana. Best wishes to you going forward, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Bill, and we appreciate the work that you guys do in your show of keeping the light on for kids across our state.
Appreciate it, Paul. And Gary, back to you.
All right, Bill, thank you. Well, the Indiana Fever and Anthem say they're joining forces to be game changers in addressing social injustice and promoting healthier lifestyles, in particular in underserved communities statewide. The multi-year partnership, Athlete to Advocate, aims to empower athletes to become champions for change. We get details on this unique partnership now from Indiana Fever President and Chief Operating Officer Allison Barber. Allison, as always, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, let's talk about this unique partnership. And really, this is something that came out of the Indiana Fever, an idea you had there to really engage athletes and to help their voices be heard even more. Talk about the kind of the inception of the Athlete to Advocate program and what it's all about.
Gary, you know, this past summer, when our players were playing in the bubble, we witnessed them coming together to really promote social justice and to raise awareness to important issues in society. I was so inspired by the activities of our athletes that I thought, you know, is there more we could do to equip them and empower them to have an even bigger platform and a stronger voice? And I was able to work with IU School of Philanthropy. We asked them to create a new curriculum. It's very innovative. It's focused on athletes and helping them to become strong advocates. And so IU School of Philanthropy created this new program. It's a professional certificate, and it's called Athlete to Advocate. It's a 5-week program. Our players just enrolled and started this past week. They are learning more about philanthropy and leadership in philanthropy, social justice in philanthropy. So we're grateful to the IU School for creating that for us. And then we're so thrilled with Anthem. Gail and her team have come alongside, and we are so aligned in what we believe to be true and how we can make a difference in society. And so Anthem funded this program for us and other activities that we will do across the state through our partnership with Anthem.
Very good. Yeah, Gail Boudreau at Anthem and her team involved. You mentioned the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. This is, to me, a unique idea in that there's a lot of personal growth that the players will be experiencing, but then being able to take that and really engage in communities throughout the state and beyond.
I think that's exactly right. Our players, our Indiana Fever players, are so passionate about not just competing on the court, but contributing into the society. And they're already doing it. This professional certificate hopefully will just fine-tune their skills and maybe provide additional competencies so that their impact is even stronger, deeper, and more pervasive in society.
And you mentioned a two-prong approach. I think it's the Anthem Assist initiative that's part of this and part of this overall overarching initiative.
You know, that's right, Gary. We said, well, if our athletes are going to be these advocates where people will look up to them and be inspired by them, what could we also encourage in our community? And so March 1st, we'll launch the first ever Anthem Assist Award, and we'll invite people in all 92 counties to go on to the Fever website, feverbasketball.com, and nominate people in their communities, Hoosiers of all ages, that are every day doing good deeds, good work. And we want to celebrate that behavior, that activity, and award people with the new Anthem Assist Award.
Very much a statewide initiative, too. We've just got about 30 seconds left, Allison, but I know you've got a lot of nice additions, a new locker room, some new features down at the Fieldhouse, and I think we've got some video here, so some nice additions.
We're excited. Yes, we're so grateful to the Simons and to the folks at Pacer Sports Entertainment for really investing in women's sports. And this is just one more signal of how important professional women's sports are to the Simons and to our company in the new locker rooms, showcasing the championship culture that we're creating. Tamika's leading the charge, doing a great job with our team, and we can't wait to have fans back in the stadium cheering on the Fever.
And I know a lot of people share that view as well. Dr. Allison Barber is the President and Chief Operating Officer of the Indiana Fever. Allison, it was always great to see you. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Gary.
All right. And I'll be right back after this. Stay with us. Coming up next week, a new survey with some interesting predictions for economic development in 2021. Genova's Executive Managing Director Larry Gigerich will be here to break it down. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm Gary Dick. Go out and make it a successful week.
Inside Indiana Business with Gary Dick is a production of Grow Indiana Media Ventures, with support from WFYI Productions.